The wind howled across the broken plains of Deltanine, carrying with it the acrid scent of burnt metal and the sharp sting of plasma residue. Captain Ryker Voss moved cautiously through the debris, his boots crunching over shards of alien crystal that once formed the outer shell of the enemy's outpost. At his side trotted his war partner Coda, a black Hansilva Belgian Malinois, genetically enhanced for strength, loyalty, and obedience. Ryker had trained Coda since he was a pup. The dog didn't just follow commands, he anticipated them. They had survived more than a dozen missions together, and in every one, Coda had been the first to sense danger. Today was supposed to be routine. Cleanup, scouting, confirming that no surviving enemy units remained after the latest skirmish with the Zarelian forces. The last thing Ryker expected was a mystery. Coda. Scan perimeter, Ryker ordered, tapping his visor to activate motion detection. The dog barked once, low and short, then sprinted ahead with practiced precision. The ruins of the Zarelian forward base stretched out like jagged skeletons, lit dimly by the planet's setting twin suns. The air shimmered with residual heat from scorched earth and ruptured reactors. Ryker was about to call Coda back when he heard the dog's alert bark, not aggressive, not panicked, but insistent. Ryker sprinted toward the sound, weapon ready. Coda stood still near a collapsed wall, tail wagging slowly, ears perked, head tilted in curiosity. What caught Ryker off guard wasn't Coda's stance, it was what lay before him, a Zarelian, alive, partially pinned under twisted beams of alien alloy. The figure was motionless, but breathing barely. The alien's skin was a pale violet, dusted with ash and dried blood. Its eyes were closed, its face unfamiliar, but its body bore the unmistakable bioarmor of the Zarelian infantry. Ryker had seen hundreds of them, some dead, some dying. None ever spared. Coda stepped closer and whined, nudging the alien's hand gently with his nose. Ryker's instinct screamed at him to raise his rifle, finish the job. But Coda didn't growl, didn't bark. He sat down beside the alien tail, curling protectively near its arm. "You sure about this, boy?" Ryker whispered, lowering his rifle. "She's the enemy." But Coda didn't move. He simply looked at Ryker with eyes full of something more than obedience. Something like understanding, against protocol and against his better judgment. Ryker knelt and checked the alien's pulse, weak but present. Female, from what he could tell. Her breathing was shallow. The metallic sheen of her armor had been breached at the side, oozing a faint glowing fluid Zarelian blood. He should have called in a kill confirm. A live enemy was a threat, even incapacitated, but Coda's calmness confused him. The dog had never hesitated before, never acted like this. Ryker activated his comms. "Command, this is Voss. Scouting zone, Theta 5. Debris confirmed. No active threats. Area clear." He ended the message before they could reply. He wasn't lying, not entirely. "I hope I don't regret this," Ryker muttered as he began clearing the wreckage of her body. Coda helped, gripping smaller fragments with his teeth and tugging gently. Together, they lifted enough to free her. Ryker slung his rifle across his back and carefully lifted the alien woman into his arms. She was tall, her frame lean but heavier than expected due to the dense Zarelian musculature. She groaned faintly but didn't wake. Coda walked beside him as they made their way back to the transport shuttle, his pace confident, proud even, as if he knew he'd just changed something fundamental. Inside the shuttle, Ryker laid her on the medical table, engaged the automed system, and watched as it scanned her physiology. Her vitals stabilized slowly as the diagnostic display pulsed to life. "Coda," Ryker said, turning to his dog, "you've followed every kill order I've ever given, and today you chose something different." Coda sat by her side again, tail thumping lightly, eyes locked on her face. Ryker sat in the pilot's seat, rubbing a hand through his hair, watching the screens. Outside, night began to fall over the broken battlefield. Inside, a decision had already been made. Whatever was coming next, it wouldn't be simple. But Coda, who had been bred for war, had chosen peace. And Ryker couldn't ignore that. He leaned back in his seat and looked once more at the sleeping alien in his medbay. Her breath was steady now, her expression no longer pained. "All right," he said softly, to himself, to the stars, or maybe just to Coda. "Let's see where this goes." The steady hum of the shuttle's engine filled the cabin as Ryker monitored the alien's vitals on the overhead display. She hadn't stirred much since he'd brought her aboard, though her breathing had deepened. The med scanner displayed stabilized. Energy patterns an encouraging sign, even if he didn't fully understand the biology behind them. Coda sat like a statue near her table, not moving except to occasionally shift or lean closer to her. Ryker had seen the dog track and neutralize targets without hesitation, even aliens twice his size. But now, there was only calm in his eyes, like he'd already made peace with her presence. Ryker leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands folded. "What are you seeing that I don't?" he muttered. Coda tilted his head, but gave no answer, just that same patient, watchful expression. Suddenly, a soft cough pulled Ryker's attention to the medbay. The alien woman stirred. Her violet eyelids fluttered open, revealing irises that shimmered with subtle hues of green and gold. Her gaze was hazy at first, unfocused, but sharpened quickly. When she saw Ryker, she flinched, her fingers instinctively curling into fists. Ryker raised both hands slowly. "Hey, easy, you're safe here." She looked around, at the clean metallic interior of the shuttle, at the glowing med panel beside her, then at Coda, who had moved closer again, tail gently swaying. The moment she noticed the dog, she froze. Her fingers unclenched. Coda gave a low, soft whine and laid his head gently on the edge of the bed. The alien blinked at him in confusion, then slowly raised a hand and touched the dog's fur. "You didn't attack," she said. Her voice was melodic, though tinged with weakness. Ryker nodded. "That's kind of the point. Neither did you." She looked back at him, her features hard to read. "You are a Terran soldier. You were trained to kill us, and yours Relian, which means you were trained to kill us too." Ryker leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Yet here we are." There was silence between them for a long moment. She studied him with careful eyes, as if trying to decide whether he was lying or just foolish. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Vetra, second-class navigator, Zerelian, forward guard. Ryker Voss, Captain, Terran Recon. Division." He paused. "And that's Coda. He found you." Vetra's hand moved through the dog's fur, slowly, cautiously. "This animal sensed I meant no harm." "I think he sensed you needed help," Ryker replied. "He's never been wrong about people." Her expression softened for the briefest moment before the guard returned. "You should have left me, maybe," Ryker said, "but I didn't." Her brows furrowed. "Why?" Ryker considered lying, brushing it off as instinct or curiosity, but something about her calmness, her confusion, made him want to be honest. "Because for a second, I looked at you, And you didn't look like a soldier. You looked like someone scared and hurt. And Coda didn't growl. So, I listened to him. Vetra leaned back slowly, her breathing evening out as the medical nana continued to repair the damage inside her. I saw you during the battle, she said quietly. I saw how you fought. Then you know I don't hesitate when I need to. She nodded. That is why I'm confused. Ryker smirked. Me, too. For the next hour, they spoke little. Ryker monitored the systems, waiting for a chance to leave orbit before a patrol swept the area. Vetra rested, gathering strength. Coda remained near her side, as if standing guard. Then, without warning, a low alert pinged on Ryker's console. Incoming signal to in patrol, 15 clicks and closing. Damn, he muttered, flipping switches. Too soon, they're sweeping for survivors. He looked at Vetra. I can't let them find you. Her eyes narrowed. You would hide me, from your own people. Ryker nodded. They won't ask questions. They'll just take you in, and I've seen what happens after that. I could be using you, she said softly, manipulating your sympathy to survive. Maybe, he replied. But if I believed that, I wouldn't be having this conversation. He punched a few commands into the panel and opened a hidden compartment beneath the floor. Get in, it's shielded. They won't scan you in there. Vetra hesitated. Then she looked at Coda. The dog stepped back, giving her space. That seemed to be all the reassurance she needed. She slid into the compartment and curled up silently. Ryker sealed it just as the patrol vessel hailed his come. This is Recon Patrol 7. Identify and report status. Ryker tapped the mic. Captain Ryker Voss. Ship ID Echo 12. Cleanup complete in Sector 9. No survivors. Preparing for extraction. A pause. Then the voice returned, calm but suspicious. Copy that, Echo 12. Sending coordinates. For return. Stay alert. Ports of Xerelian stragglers still active in your area. Ryker confirmed, then muted the channel. The silence in the shuttle was thick with unspoken tension. Coda padded over and placed a paw on Ryker's boot. I hope I made the right call, Ryker whispered. The dog didn't answer, but his tail thumped once steady, confident. Ryker kept the shuttle on a steady course, cutting low across the mountains where the terrain would mask them from deeper scans. The Terran patrol had peeled away minutes ago, satisfied by his falsified report. But he wasn't relaxed. Not yet. He glanced at the panel showing the hidden compartments. Vetra's heartbeat was slow but stable. She hadn't made a sound since he sealed her in. He tapped lightly on the floor panel. All clear, he whispered. A few seconds later, the latch clicked open and Vetra slowly emerged. She blinked against the brighter cabin lights, taking a long breath as she adjusted to the open space again. Coda was there instantly, wagging his tail as if welcoming her back. She reached down and touched his head gently. You kept your word, she said without looking at Ryker. I'm a soldier, Ryker said, but I'm not a liar. She stood carefully, the medical treatment clearly still working through her system. Her movements were stiff, but her balance was better now. Her eyes wandered across the control panel, the open space, the stars peeking. Through the viewport, this ship, she said, is small for a Terran war vessel. It's not a war vessel. It's Recon class, fast, quiet, built to observe and report, not to engage. Vetra nodded, her curiosity clearly growing. You fly alone. I fly with him, Ryker replied, gesturing to Coda. He's all the backup I usually need. She looked at the dog again, then back at Ryker. He listens to you. Follows. You, but he didn't follow you when you found me. Ryker gave a dry chuckle. I noticed. Why do you think that is? I've been asking myself the same thing. He paused, watching her. But I think he saw something I didn't. Something human, maybe. Vetra sat on the edge of the medical cot, brushing her fingers through her now dried silver blue hair. We're not human, she said, her voice low. Your people forget that we don't feel as you do. We don't bond the same way. We weren't made for emotion. Maybe that's what the war taught both sides to believe, Ryker replied, but I'm not so sure it's true anymore. She looked up, surprised. Why? Because you don't act like an enemy. He leaned forward. You've been on this ship for hours. You haven't tried to kill me. You haven't sabotaged the controls. You didn't even panic when I lied to my own command to protect you. Vetra looked away, her gaze fixed on the stars. Maybe I'm tired of being someone else's enemy. There it was, the crack in the armor. Ryker saw it, heard it, and felt it in the way her shoulders dropped slightly, as though a weight she didn't want to carry had just shifted. He moved toward the back compartment and pulled out a ration pack. You hungry? She nodded slowly. I haven't eaten since before the attack. Ryker handed her the heated tray and watched as she examined it, then took a cautious bite. Her face tightened. It tastes like your military approach. Functional, unpleasant, but efficient. Ryker grinned. You should try our coffee. It's basically poison. Vetra took another bite, then looked at him more closely. Why are you like this? Like what? Calm, kind, curious. You should fear me. Maybe I should, Ryker admitted. But I don't, because right now you're not acting like a threat. You're talking to me. You're feeding my dog. You're recovering in my medbay. That doesn't look like war. That looks like survival. Vetra's expression shifted, her alien eyes flickering with something between doubt and gratitude. You're not like the others we've fought. Ryker shrugged. Maybe some of us are tired too. Coda padded over to her and dropped a small stuffed toy one Ryker had used to train him back when he was still a pup. Vetra blinked at it, then slowly picked it up. The gesture caught her off guard. What is this? Toy for training or comfort? He brings it to people he likes. She looked down at the dog. Why would he like me? Ryker smiled. Maybe he thinks you need it more than he does. For a while, there was only the soft hum of the engines and the distant ping of space. Debris on the hull. Then, slowly, Vetra leaned back on the cot, still holding the toy in her hand. She looked more like a traveler now than a soldier. Someone far from home, unsure of what came next. As Ryker set their course for a deeper part of unpatrolled space, he glanced back at her. Enemies didn't look like this. They didn't rest on your medcot. They didn't feed your dog. They didn't ask why they weren't feared. Whatever she was, Vetra wasn't the enemy anymore. Ryker sat in the pilot's chair, eyes flicking between navigation data and the occasional long-range scan. The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewport, scattered like shattered diamonds across the void. They'd been drifting through uncharted space for over a day, staying off known patrol routes, and so far, no one had found them. Behind him, Vetra was asleep, curled into a corner of the cabin where she could see Coda stretched beside her. The dog had grown attached to her in a way Ryker couldn't explain, and stranger still, she had warmed to him, too. She now reached out and pet him without hesitation, like she'd done it for years. Ryker didn't know what was happening between Them between all three of them, really. But it felt different, lighter, like war had been set aside for just a moment, and something more human was sneaking in. Then the proximity scanner chirped. Riker's hand flew to the controls. The signal was faint, but RELAN, encrypted data burst, transmitting from deep space. He narrowed the signal range, tapped a few commands, and locked onto it. The message wasn't aimed at them. In fact, it wasn't meant to be caught by anyone. Outside the Terran's central command frequency, he plugged in a back door. Decryptor one he wasn't supposed to have, and waited. The code unpacked slowly. Behind him, Vetra stirred. "What is it?" she asked, voice thick with sleep. "Something strange," Ryker muttered. "Terran military transmission, not directed at any units in this sector. Looks like it was routed through a relay station on the outer edge." She stood and stepped beside him, arms folded across her still-healing ribs. "You intercepted it, not intentionally, but, now that I have it, I want to know why it's out here." Coda sat up, ears twitching. Ryker pressed play. The voice that came through was familiar, sharp, unmistakably high-ranking. "This is Admiral Revan to the Zarelian High Command. As per our arrangement, the destabilizer payloads have been placed along the neutral corridor. When your forces cross into Terran space, we will retaliate as agreed swiftly and publicly. Casualties will be controlled. The war must escalate to justify the next phase of the operation. Repeat, escalation is vital for economic control and population compliance. Begin Phase 4 within 48 hours. End transmission." The silence that followed was deafening. Ryker sat still, eyes wide, jaw clenched. "They're working together, the Terran Admiral and your High Command." Vetra's breath caught. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. "They're faking the next attack, using controlled destruction to keep the war alive." Ryker stared at the playback logs. This wasn't war anymore. It's theater-designed chaos. Both sides using soldiers like you and me as pawns. Coda growled low, sensing the tension between them. "They're going to sacrifice thousands," Ryker said, his voice barely a whisper. "Just to maintain control." Vetra's eyes blazed with fury. "We have to stop this. That message, it proves everything." "No one will believe it came from me," Ryker replied. "And if I try to send it to command, they'll trace me. Destroy this ship and bury the truth." She looked at him. "But they'd believe me." Ryker shook his head. "Not if they think you're a prisoner. You'd be dismissed as a coerced informant." "Then we tell them together," she said. "You're a decorated Terran captain. I'm a Zarelian officer. If we send the message together from neutral ground, they'll have to listen." Ryker considered it. The risk, the potential backlash, but also what was at stake if they didn't. "You're suggesting we broadcast it openly, break ranks, betray both sides?" "I'm suggesting we tell the truth," she said quietly. "You said I wasn't your enemy. Maybe it's time we show them why." He looked into her eyes. They were fierce but clear, not filled with hate, not even fear, just purpose. "You realize," he said, "once we do this, there's no going back. We'll both be targets, hunted." Vetra nodded. "But we'll be on the right side." Coda gave a sharp bark, as if offering his approval. Ryker smiled bitterly. "Guess the dog's in, too." They began uploading the intercepted message to a neutral relay, station hidden in the remains of a scrapped satellite in Old Terran. Communications node that hadn't been used in years, but still pinged from time to time like a ghost. It would bounce the signal across open networks, making it nearly impossible to suppress. Once it starts broadcasting, Ryker said, fingers hovering over the final command, everything changes. Vetra placed a hand over his, then let it change. He pressed the key, the data stream activated. The message went live, and with it, the truth began to spread. Outside the viewport, space remained silent, but something had shifted. A war that had lasted years had just been cracked open, not by a fleet, not by a weapon, but by two soldiers and a dog who saw each other as something more than enemies. The moment the message went live, Ryker knew there was no turning back. He'd broken half a dozen military protocols just by decoding it, broadcasting it to both Terran and Zarelian sectors. That was treason for both of them. But, as he looked across the shuttle at Vetra, who now stood tall, her violet skin glowing faintly under the soft lights, he felt no regret, only resolve. The truth was out. He just didn't know how long they had before someone tried to silence it. Coda sat alert, near the door, ears rotating. His low growl vibrated through the floor. Ryker turned sharply. Incoming. Vetra had already moved to the sensor console. Multiple vessels, fast approach. To Terran, one Zarelian. Guess they listened, Ryker said. And now they're coming to erase the proof. No, Vetra said, eyes narrowed. They're coming because we scared them. He engaged the engines, veering the shuttle sharply toward a nearby asteroid belt natural cover. The ship rattled as debris scraped the hull. Behind them, the sensor screen flared red. They're not hailing us, Vetra noted. That means they're planning a silent intercept. No negotiation. Riker's fingers danced across the controls. We need a place to land. Somewhere too risky for them to follow. She pointed to a series of moonlets orbiting a gas giant nearby. They're fragmented. Terrain, magnetic interference. It'll disrupt their targeting systems. Let's hope it disrupts their pride, too, Ryker muttered. Coda barked. Short and loud, an urgent call. The ship jolted as a warning klaxon blared. Lock-on detected, Vetra shouted. Ryker spun the controls hard to port, dragging the shuttle through a tight cluster of rock shards. A plasma beam flashed past, slicing through empty space. Ryker gritted his teeth. One more direct hit and we're done. I can override the secondary propulsion, Vetra said, leaping to a terminal. Give us a short burst enough to reach the shadow zone behind the largest moonlet. You sure? Ryker asked. No, she replied, tapping furiously. But I trust you. Do you trust me? He looked at her, completely alien, completely determined. Yes, he said. I do. The secondary engines screamed as they kicked in, the ship lurching forward at an angle. Inertia slammed Ryker against his seat and sent Coda skidding, before the dog braced himself on all fours. Just as another shot flashed toward them, they ducked behind the moonlet. The signal vanished. Signal masking engaged, Vetra said between breaths. They'll have to search by eye now. Ryker sighed and leaned back, his heart pounding. We bought some time, that's all. Coda padded over and rested his head on Riker's boot, eyes locked on the door, as if expecting it to burst open at any moment. Vetra sat across from him, brushing a glowing strand of hair behind her ear. They'll call us traitors. Let them, Ryker said. It means we told the right story. She looked at him long, her expression unreadable. You still think this ends in peace? I don't know how it ends, he said honestly. But I know we've crossed a line we can't step back from. So we go forward. Together, she nodded. Together. Silence fell for a moment. The stars outside flickered behind veils of gas and dust. Somewhere far away, fleets were mobilizing. Orders were being shouted. Leaders were deciding how to control the narrative. But in this tiny shuttle, floating quietly between destruction and discovery, two former enemies had already made their decision. Ryker looked down at Coda. You really knew, didn't you? Coda gave a low huff in response. We'll need allies, Vetra said. People who still believe the war was about something more than power. I've got one, Ryker said. An old mentor captain, Soren Vega. He retired from field ops, but he still listens, and I can contact a Zarelian historian. She's been documenting the civilian cost of the war since the beginning. She believes peace is possible, then. We build something, Ryker said. Not a revolution. A revelation. They looked at each other, human and alien, both worn and scarred, both filled with something quietly unbreakable. Let's give them a reason to remember us, Vetra whispered. The stars outside burned on. Somewhere, the war raged louder than ever. But inside the shuttle, peace had already begun. The silence inside the shuttle felt heavier now. Not from fear, but from something deeper. A pause before the next storm. Ryker stood by the viewport, watching streaks of ion particles drift past the hull, illuminated by the faint glow of the gas giant they were hiding behind. He had been in dozens of missions, lost comrades, made hard calls, but nothing had felt as uncertain or as meaningful as this. Behind him, Vetra sat on the floor near Coda, her legs crossed, her fingers gently combing through his fur. The dog lay contentedly, tail thumping lightly. Ryker could hear her speaking softly to him in her native tongue. Her voice rose and fell like a distant song, filled with warmth. He understands me, she said finally, not turning. He understands everyone who doesn't lie, Ryker replied. That's his gift. Vetra looked up. You trust him more than your own people, because he's never had anything to gain or lose. Just instinct and heart. She was quiet for a moment, then stood and walked over. And me, you. Trust me more than your people now. Ryker studied her face. The soft light caught the shimmer in her skin, the tiny flecks of color beneath her cheeks. She was beautiful, yes, but not just for what she looked like. She was strong, honest, and full of questions that matched his own. I do, he said. Her eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected that answer to come so easily. Even after all the blood between us. Ryker stepped closer. Because of it, you saw the same madness I did, and you chose to walk away. The air between them shifted, not just with tension, but with recognition, the kind of stillness that happens when two people finally see each other without a filter of fear or politics. Vetra reached up and touched the patch on Ryker's uniform. Why did you save me? I didn't know at first, he said softly, but now I think. Maybe you were the only person left who would understand what this war's really cost us. She smiled gently, a slow curve that made something in his chest tighten. I'm not human, she said. You know that. I do, Ryker whispered. And I've never been more sure I want to know someone anyway. Her hand didn't move. Neither did his. KO'd wind softly, then turned in a slow circle before lying back down as if giving them permission. Vetra leaned in, just slightly, among my people. Bonds formed during shared crisis are sacred. They're called life marks. Ryker raised an eyebrow. Sounds serious. It is. We don't choose lightly, but sometimes the bond chooses us. She rested her forehead against his. I think the bond chose me when your dog did. Their kiss was quiet, not rushed, just a meeting of breath and skin, a crossing of that final, invisible line. When they pulled apart, Ryker let out a slow breath. That wasn't part of the mission. Neither was truth, she said with a sly smile, or peace, or this ridiculous dog. Coda barked at that, tail wagging like he'd just won a bet. Their moment was interrupted by a soft beep from the console, an incoming message encrypted, but not hostile. Ryker crossed to the panel, tapped a few keys, and watched the signal unfold. A man appeared, older, with streaks of grey in his beard and sharp, calculating eyes. Ryker, you always did find trouble in the darkest places. Ryker grinned. Soren, I was hoping you'd still be monitoring the back channels. I got your message, and the broadcast. Do you have any idea what kind of hornet's nest you've kicked open? I do, Ryker said, but it had to be done. Soren's eyes flicked to Vetra, who stepped into view. She didn't flinch. You're the Zarelian, Soren said, voice even. I am, she said, and I want to help end this before more innocents die. There was a long pause, then Soren nodded. There's a group Terrans and Zarelians, both off-grid, waiting for someone to light the match. You just did. Coordinates are embedded in this message. We'll cover your arrival. Thank you, old man, Ryker said. Don't thank me yet. The ones hunting you won't stop. This just puts more fuel in the fire. As the message ended, Ryker turned to Vetra. She stepped close again, her voice low. You sure you want to keep doing this? He took her hand. I've crossed every line I swore I wouldn't, and I've never been more sure of anything. The stars outside still burned, but the path forward had never looked brighter. The rebel outpost wasn't much to look at, just a jagged stretch of rocky ground tucked into a crater on the shadow side of a dead moon, invisible to most scanners. But as the shuttle descended through the turbulent atmosphere, Ryker saw the glint of makeshift landing, beacons spent, coded, but welcoming. He guided the ship in manually, watching dust swirl across the hull as they touched down. Vetra stood beside him, her posture alert but calm. Coda paced behind them, tail flicking with quiet tension. Ready? Ryker asked. Vetra nodded. They'll be watching, judging. Let them, Ryker said. They don't have to like us, they just need to hear us. They descended the ramp side by side, with Coda trotting ahead, ears up, eyes sharp. The outpost crew waited at a distance, humans in patched uniforms and armored jackets, Zarelians in tattered cloaks and utility suits. Some reached for weapons instinctively when they saw Vetra. Others narrowed their eyes at Ryker. But no one moved when Coda approached. The dog walked straight to the center of the group and sat, calm, proud, and then he barked once, loud, commanding. That single sound rippled through the crowd like a signal. The tension didn't vanish, but it softened. Murmurs spread, shoulders lowered. No one had trained this dog. No one had prepared him for diplomacy. But somehow he had chosen this place, the people, as if he knew it mattered. Vetra stepped forward. We didn't come to fight, she said, her voice strong. We came to end the lie. There was silence. Then, slowly, one of the Zarelians stepped forward. A tall male with sharp ridges along his cheeks and a battle-worn insignia on his chest. We saw the broadcast, he said. We saw the message. Are you saying it was real? Ryker nodded. I intercepted it myself. Vetra decoded it with me. We sent it out together. And you expect us to believe you just turned? Another human asked, arms crossed. I didn't turn, Ryker said. I woke up. We've all been used to our dead, our grief, our anger. All of it, used by leaders who want the war to keep going because peace is bad for business. More silence. Then someone else stepped forward, young Xerelian, female with a scar down one side of her face. You trust each other? She asked softly. Ryker and Vetra glanced at each other. I do, Ryker said. With my life, Vetra added. And your dog? The woman asked, half skeptical, half curious. Coda looked at her, then licked Vetra's hand and sat beside her again. A low laugh escaped one of the rebel soldiers, then another. A few smiles. Someone muttered, maybe we should just let the dog run things. That broke the last wall. Over the next hours, they talked. Shared intelligence. Reviewed the intercepted message. Some still doubted, but none could deny what they saw. Old enemies stood together now, not in theory but in truth. By nightfall, a plan was forming. A joint message, not from a government or a general but from the soldiers, the people who had lived the war, bled for it, and were ready to stop bleeding. They filmed it beneath the crater sky, with stars shining bright behind them. Ryker spoke first. My name is Captain Ryker, vos terran, recon. I've fought for years in a war I thought was just, but I was wrong. I was lied to, and I won't be silent anymore. Vetra stood beside him. I am Vetra, Xerelian navigator. I lost my siblings to this war. I was taught humans were cruel, empty, but a human saved me when he didn't have to. His dog trusted me before I even opened my eyes. And now I trust them both. Coda barked once and sat between them, looking directly into the camera. It was short, honest, raw, and within hours, it went viral across deep space networks, pirate relays, and hidden satellites. It sparked debate, anger, hope, but most of all it sparked momentum. A week later, both the Terran and Xerelian governments were forced to respond. Too many voices were rising now. Too many truths could no longer be ignored. Investigations were launched. Protests broke out across colonies. Troops began refusing orders. The war didn't end overnight, but it began to unravel. In the weeks that followed, Ryker and Vetra became something unexpected. Not just fugitives or heroes, but symbols. Not of rebellion, but of reason. They lived quietly, deep in neutral space, helping where they could, guiding others who wanted peace. And through it all, Coda remained by their side. He had once been trained to kill, but in the end, it was his loyalty, his pure, silent wisdom that had changed everything.